Hi folks, welcome to Reloved Guitars on another nice evening. What we've got here is a Ibanez S series, and this one is a S520 with a, was it made in Indonesia? Anyway, so this is one of Colin's two guitars that he's brought me across, and this one's interesting for one main reason. First of all, I like these Ibanez's, they're beautiful, but you may be already able to spot something about this that has happened during the time that Colin's owned it and been playing it. And as I'm zooming in here, you can probably tell what's wrong. Yep, the neck is springing out of its natural kind of habitat. See that? There's a big gap in there that we don't want. So I've got to have a good look and see what's torn out from under there, because that's unusual for the screws to pull out under string loading. So should be a good straightforward setup, partly because Colin wants the tremolo hard-tailed. So that's going to stay where it is. We don't have to go through the kerfuffle of setting a floating, well, it's not that difficult, but a Floyd Rose. But once we get the neck sorted out, it should be a straightforward, light fret leveling, and these frets should dress up beautifully, and the action here should be great as well, but we'll double check all of that. One of the things that you can probably also see, if I just carefully put that up there, is in cahoots with the neck sort of hanging off. If we go, where's the camera bit? If we go sort of halfway dead center, you can see that the neck isn't even aligned properly. There's far too much room on the bass side and not a lot on the treble side. And actually there doesn't appear to be much of a gap down there. So the whole of this neck joint is suspect as far as I'm concerned. So I think I haven't got the headset mic or whatever, so we're just going on normal iPhone sound. So really what I'm just going to do is I think I'm just going to get stuck in to figuring out what has gone wrong here. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is remove these locking nuts down here. I'll try and bring you down as far as the power cable will go. This is called being slightly unprepared, in that I didn't charge up everything completely beforehand, so I'm kind of having to work on a mixture of built-in onboard iPhone sound and also what else? Yeah, iPhone built-in iPhone sound. So these are loose anyway. Okay, that's interesting. So those are already loose, we'll take those off. So in talking to Colin, this sounded like it sort of happened over a bit of time. It might have been in its case, not been played for a bit, so it's clearly gone wonky at some point. He doesn't recall it taking a knock of any kind, so we've really got to take this joint apart and see what's going on. So we will get the strings off. Obviously I don't want to break them off or cut them out. I'm going to reuse them for any fret leveling. So yeah, this is the first of two. The other guitar that Colin's brought down is a Variax, which I like as a guitar. The electronics frighten me. Thankfully, there's nothing obviously wrong with the electronics, because I tried to figure out why one set previously weren't working and I could not pin down. Oh, there goes the bridge. Right. Couldn't figure out what on earth was going on in order to get it working again. So it was like it wasn't grounded or something. Right, let's have just a quick look. I think what I'll do is I'll try and just put this out of the way. in a minute, and we'll sort of just get the neck off before we go too much further. Now, there's a sort of uneven feel to those neck bolts there, so I will. There's a fly in here that's driven me bonkers. It's still here. Gone. I think it made it out the window finally. Really? Okay, so just getting a feel for these. They're fairly loose and it feels like it's definitely pulling in the wrong kind of, slightly the wrong direction. You can feel that it knows, the screw knows that the neck isn't flush the way it should be. Anyway, so we'll get this apart, we'll examine the inside, and then we'll worry about the other things afterwards. So I'm just going to keep these for the time being in their original order. God, there's still a bleeding fly in here. I'm going to have a shot at it. Go on, beat it. Come on. Goes over there and then comes back. I'll be with you in a minute. And then down here. Right, enough of that stuff. I don't want to breathe it. Which means I need to now open this door. Get some flow of air. I've still got a family of swallows at the bottom of the stairs in a little RSJ thing. RSJ? Yeah, and a kind of beam above the doorway that comes up the stairs. And they're still there. Obviously there'll come a point where they, oh God. Ugh, that's a bit of a mess. Okay. Right. So, Colin, this will interest you. We have got, somebody's put some fills in there and they've pulled out. So rather than stay in, they've actually pulled upwards. You can probably best see it like that. And they've pulled up, and that's why the whole thing's coming apart. Yeah, so we'll need to drill and refill, but that's okay. Just how it is. It's not a good. These are almost like raw plugs of some kind that somebody's used to do this. I don't know if it's a factory thing. You can even see some. You can see some scraping. This is actually, the light stuff is actually, God, they've carved it badly with a knife. That's terrible. Oh my Lord. They've actually carved this. I don't know if we can get the shadow to see. You can probably see it from there. Can you see the scalloped bit there? Make it visible. Anyway, that bit there has been carved away. It's not even flat. So they've pushed these things in, trimmed them off badly, and left the surface of the heel kind of a bit wobbly. Not too bad, but well, actually, that one kind of tilts away towards the edge. So that's crap, basically. So that's why it's doing what it's doing. And the question is, was that done in the factory for any particular reason? Who knows? So let's get a pair of pliers and see if these little things come straight out as suspected. Nah, they're not What is it made of? Even, who knows? Well, I don't know quite what it is, but whatever it is, it's come out and it's not going to be doing us any good at all. So we've not got an awful lot of choices. We've got some oak here that we're going to have to use, and we're going to have to cut to a fixed diameter and fill this in. And we've got to go oversized because we've got to make it grip, and we've got to give it as good a base as possible. So that's a 9mm dowel. And unfortunately we've got a mess here. We've got to try and drill into this and keep it steady. Now, I don't know if this is wood, but they've done something that's come out when they've, these screws pulled out of it rather than stay in. So I'm not quite sure what they've done. Any which way, we're going to have to refill it in a more. Is that wood? It is wood, but it's pulled it out. So I don't quite know what they've done for securing it in place. So the problem I've got is I'm going to have to fill these first of all with something small, just in order to locate a drill to get an accurate enough 9mm hole thereafter. Because if I try and put a drill on top of here, it's going to wobble all over the place because it's already got a degree of hole drilled already there. So so I guess I will try and find something that will work. I mean, this is uneven anyway. Let's see, this is going to be, it seems silly to do it in 2 stages, but I really will have to, because there's no way I'm going to successfully, I don't think, unless I do it on the pillar drill, with a will that work? What would work better? No, that would bounce around. So it's really got to be a Brad Pitt, I call it, Brad Point bit. So we've got, we go up to 8. That's handy, isn't it? Not. I'm sure I've got 9 somewhere else. I used just the other day, in fact, but I don't think it was on here. It would be over here in this box. Sorry about the buggering around. There's a 9. So if we were going to go straight in with the 9s, can we? Will this go? Maybe it will stay if we're doing it in the pillar drill. So let me point you at the pillar drill. Get this hooked up. Yeah, it's always interesting trying to figure out what made something go wrong. Why that was filled in the first place with those inserts. Did the neck pull itself up originally so that the previous owner felt they had to put that in place? And in which case, why, when they put it in place, did it pull up and drag the sort of wooden cores or the fills out? Because I've never had that happen with ones I fitted, I don't think. But perhaps they weren't glued in, perhaps they were just tapped in. Who knows? Right. Get on there. Right, we're going to have, now, yes, wait 1 second. Let's get a depth gauge running. My pillar drill is not very good at doing depth gauges, really, so I have to sort of bake it with a bit of tape. Achieve the same thing. So what I want to do is just figure out the depth I need to drill these 2. Well, actually I need to drill them out a little bit more than that. stuff is never sticky when you need it to be. It's really infuriating. Come on, man. Right. That's me. Depth marker there. I'll transfer it to the drill bit. As good as we can get. It needs to stay on long enough to do a couple of, sorry, 4. Now this one, slightly concerning. I'm going to I'm going to need to try and get all of this in, but it is worryingly close to the edge. There's some glue and God knows what stuff has been put in here. Do me a favour. King size flies come back. Right, let's have a feel. Fine, ready for replacement oak. Seems quite extreme, but it's the best way to do it. Okay, so now we have 4 very clean holes, just the size to take that. So I need 4 pieces of this, each one X amount long, which I will cut with my, now I've got what must be the biggest fly ever. It's not even that big. Sorry. Come away. I want a bit, I guess I need a little bit of excess on all of these, so I don't want it under. I'd rather trim some off the top than be left under. So I'm kind of overestimating these. And we've also probably maybe a good idea to just carefully do some sanding there if we make sure that we get it, keep it flush. So I'm just going to cut these 4 pieces. Hardwood on the line. Right, 4 little plugs of oak. And we get some glue, let me get some other bits. Hopefully, I think that flyer's bitten the dust or something like that. Okay, so when I'm doing something like this, I would like to, sorry, that was a great view. I'm going to, these fit pretty well straight in. Oh, maybe not quite. So what I do is I will just slightly, very slightly taper off one end, just so that it will go in easier. And then the problem is you can never quite flatten the bottom out, so that's just going to have to be a gap if there is one. But what I then do is I put a little slice down the side of it, and the idea is for that to allow glue to come up. So then I get me glue supply. So this should take, I mean, it'll be a couple of hours before it's set dry, but usually, I mean, you can use it, you can do it before that. Let's have a look. Let's start with this one here. So I'm going to put in plenty of glue, and I'm going to get ready to tap the piece in, and I just check where I've rounded the edge, which I can see okay. Get my little hammer. At this point I will give it some extra glue on the edge and on the bottom, just to be sure, and then start there. Tissue. Now if I find that this doesn't go in, then I will sort of backtrack and reconsider the reconsider the maybe the channel around the side, whatever it is that's stopping it go in, but that feels just about right. Yep. Okay, and so we're going to do a similar thing with this one. Round off the edge, taper it a little bit. So yeah, who knows the history of that? It could have been a second from the factory. It's got some history in it, which we don't really know about. All we do know is that it's come out once before, by the looks of things. And the problem with this is very thin, so I obviously, you know, if it's going to split, it's going to split. There's not an awful lot I can do. I've obviously done my best to get the piece, the drill matched with this thing, the extra thing, the insert. I'm going across the grain. Okay, that one fitted a bit smoother, which is great. Fine, and you will also use the saw to cut those other bits, cut the extra off the top, and then we'll finally cut it smooth with or flatten it smooth with sander with some sandpaper. Let's use that end. So this is just a homemade device that I use for cleaning fret slots, but it's also quite good for putting this sort of groove down the side, and I'm just doing there. Now these, I'll be much more confident about these two holes here because they're nowhere near as close to the edge. Again, that's a sort of factory decision to end up with the holes that close to the edge. It's not one I would be comfortable with, but it's done and we're stuck with it, so we have to go with it. So just tap that in, and then get this one ready. So I guess what you can see is that somebody's tried to do this before. because for some reason the weight of the pull of the strings has caused some sort of tear or stripping of the thread in the holes, which I find quite unusual. They can, I mean, Adam's guitar had another fly. God alive! It's not surprising though. The trouble is I've got this nest of sparrows down there, and the bird poop building up is quite substantial, and I don't want to disturb them because they're a beautiful little family of critters, but obviously what they're pooping out is attractive to the flies. Anyway, yes, I had one of Adam's 2 guitars the other evening had worn out neck joint, and in a way, I think the reason it was worn out was because it was originally too loose, so that you could see that the neck had over the time probably woggled from side to side, which had led to the things wearing out. The holes, I know what I mean. Okay. Okay, so I'm really sort of aiming to cut a little bit flat if I can, but a little bit upwards as well. It's quite difficult to do. You can do as best you can. Yeah, so on that one, I had to do the same thing, fix up the holes, put new timber in, new hardwood, give it a chance of holding the neck firmly in place. It was much improved afterwards. So these Japanese flat saws are great because you can put them down on the deck like this and get a good flush cut. It does need a little trim afterwards with the blade, but that's pretty close. Okay, and not all of the grain is in the right direction, but it's some of it's crossed and some of it's a bit diagonal, but it's not the most important aspect. So then we could, at this point, we can actually, it's probably better to gently clamp the neck down at that point and hold it there. And after that, we can sort of take 2 hands to the bits of wood here. So I'm just going to hold that lightly-ish. Okay, and you can probably see what's going on here. Yeah. So now I've got a sharp blade here, and I can curve the blade and use it to just trim stuff from this side. It tapers upwards a bit, so you tend to have to turn it round and have a go at the other sides to get it totally even. That was pretty flush actually. The reason I bend the blades is to stop them cutting around anywhere other than the bit I'm trying to cut. So if you do it flat, you can bend it that way and it cuts in all around there. If you bend it upwards, you've got to have a good grip, but bend it upwards and you focus the point of the blade into a sort of small area, a smaller point, and you can mostly avoid doing any damage to anything else. But you have to be very good at gripping it, and there is quite a significant chop risk associated with it. So you've got to have a really controlled grip on it at all times. Okay, so we're nearly there. Now, realistically, good thing about this drill and fill business is that we could go with that as such. We don't have to wait all night for it to set. That's tightly fitted in there, and it's going to glue itself overnight. And if I wanted to now, I can drill straight on top of those, and the screws will be going in clear of the glue anyway. So I'm just turning it around so I can just have a quick go at the this bit on the corner here, so I don't want any of this sticking up. We'll do it with partly with sandpaper, but this helps me trim off any sticking up bits. That's about it. Right, well, the bit about sanding, so you have to kind of think hard about what you're going to do, because if you go for some sanding, well, first of all, you're going to lose these cute little marks. That's okay, but if we're going to sand, we want to get the block, we want it really flat. We want to be sure that we're sanding a kind of equally. So a square, flat block is ideal, and you can see that if we go too far, it'll be, the area we've sanded will be a bit visible. But this follows the body contour here, so that should be okay. So I'm not going to try and fix this little slope here. It's going to have to sort of work with what it's got there. And again, my aim is, if I use the block, to keep it flat at all times, so that I don't introduce any slopes into this pocket, this fit. And that's probably just marginally better than it was before. It does have some strange material sticking up all over. Let me get rid of a few things so we can get back to focusing on what we're looking at. Yeah, it's got an unusual, uneven, slightly messy surface on the neck pocket, which doesn't impress me much. He said in his best Shania Twain impersonation. And we've got strings that do this thing of coming off and hooking around every living thing in the world, and making, honestly, it's like an octopus, and you can't look away before all the strings hook themselves around it. Yeah, so the point here being, I don't know if you can see very well, but that actually isn't very smooth. See, that's got some lumps and bumps. I have a feeling that somebody's tried to maybe fill it or something. It's not that bad, but it's been kind of hit on with something for some reason. So again, I'm just going to run this in here, and if there are any obvious bumps and lumps, we'll take them off before putting the neck back together, because in putting the neck back together, we're sort of committed to the holes that they've already drilled through the body on the other side of the heel. Right, what I've also done, by the way, is I've been very careful here on making it important to just chop off any of this finish at the front of the pocket, because that was sticking up a bit, but now it's dead smooth, which is good. So yeah, the challenge now will be to get refit this and drill new pilot holes, and these holes already look a bit ragged. Now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, how substantial are these? They're not really that, they're not very long, but then it's not a very deep pocket heel combination. So we have the thing there, and we also knew that it was ropey in terms of its alignment. So there's no back of the neck pocket for us to put any shims in to reposition the alignment. So we have to get it right in terms of hold it down with brute force. And these holes here are, well, they're a bit, they're just about the right size, but probably, if anything, a little tight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the sort of diameter of this thread on here, and we've got 506. So if we go for a 5mm bit and just run it through these holes just to clear out any of the muck, we probably could go for 5.5, and it wouldn't hurt to have that extra bit of clean space. 5.5. There's no reason at all, there's no good reason to have the screws gripping into this part of the guitar. You don't want that at all. So I'm going to extend these to 5.5. Because there were 5 to begin with. That cleans them out, and it also means that our screws will now go through there without gripping that part. They only will grip to do any pulling onto the heel itself, which is what we want. Now this was 5mm, which means we need to think carefully about the best diameter for the pilot hole. We know this is 9, so if we go with a 4, let's say 3.5mm, leaving 1.5 millimeters for the thread. If we go 3.5, that means we'll sit in the middle of there with 3.5. The remainder from 9 is 5.5, and that'll be 2.25 on either side. So what did we say? 3.5. We'll see how it takes to 3.5. So this is where it's very, very tricky, because all you have to hand in this operation now is holding these two together, and they are pretty they're pretty clear where they go. The neck fits back snug with a little bit of overhang on there. It fits snug to the edge of this pocket. I'm going to have to do this sort of standing up here, so I keep it all in one place. Oh, and of course what I have to do before I do any of that is I've got to just put a limit on the depth of my drill. A bit of a pain this. So we go through here and we go through to there, and we have to figure out how far through that goes. Let's put it in one of these. Nice fit. Okay, so that is 0. That is approximately 14 mils of space. It was 14 mils deep into the heel. That's what I'm aiming for. So now I've got 14 mils plus the width of this. Quite difficult. What is the width of this? We're going to take it from there, are we? 14 mils plus, I would say 20, 14, so call it 34 in total. 34 in total. That'll do. A bit of marker tape. 34 in total. Down to there. Down to there. Better to be slight. So sticky, eh? Fantastic. It's just naff. It really is rubbish, this sort of technology. Sticky tape that isn't sticky. Right, just a quick double check. Yep, that's okay. Rubbish frog tape. You're good at some things, but you don't work in this way. Just smacked my arm on the thing. Right, so I go back into here, place it in there, let it sink back down. I've got my guide to the lowest common denominator, the lowest depth I want to go, Hold this snug to there. There's no other way of holding it in place. And I'm going to do this first one to there, and the second one to there. And I'm going to then get me a okay, that feels a fraction under for the size of the required thing, but it's a good clean hole. But I'll go in a bit wider. I think I'll go with a 4 instead of 3.5, just to give it a bit more room. 1 millimetre rip. And what did we say? 34 in total. Perhaps stop it a little bit short on this one. 32, what's that? 32-ish. God, this has got absolutely no sticking ability whatsoever. Okay, so a little bit wider, because I think we might be struggling to get the screws in. And here we go again. So I did the nearest one and the furthest one in the corner. So I want to get them into tightly into place. Go over this one. That's good. That's good. Now we go back to fitting it in. Yeah, a millimeters bite. Okie dokie. Let's get this one in. Now, the thing is with this is that if the alignment is really bad, we don't have a lot of room to play with, because it's quite a fitted pocket, you could say. So there's not a lot of wiggle room. So we might have to live with the alignment we've got. So there's what we've got right now is only 2 bolts in, but I think what I might do is, just for this moment, is I might lightly, if I can untangle this monstrous thing, I might lightly affix the low E and the high E, just use them as guides before we use them as sacrificial strings later on. If I could just untangle this a tiny bit, it would be helpful. Holy cow. Right, so we could go over here, and we don't need the locking nuts or anything. We'll just attach this lightly, and obviously I don't want to put any full weight on it. I don't want it pulling the thing up again after all we've just done. That's lightly in there, and what I'm looking for now is to see whether I've got a good alignment before committing to the next 2 holes, which will definitely hold it in place. Now, if, for example, the alignment wasn't great, I might try and realign it and drill the next 2 holes in the correct alignment. But the problem with that would be, quite seriously, how to hold it where I want it, because, as I said, unlike other guitars, this has got no back of the neck pocket, because sometimes you can use the back of the neck pocket to insert a little spacer shim. That's actually not bad at all. I would be happy with that. God, not with these damn gripping strings. As you can see, put it in the center. It's dead center. That's much better than it was. So I can go for that. Yes, can do. So there's no harm with having the strings there for a moment. So we can just hold it there, and while I'm in a good place, I can now go for the remaining 2. Come on. those in and tighten them up. Yeah, nice and solid. And then, while I'm at it, nice and solid there. While I'm at it now, I can, we can mark off these frets, since I'm going to need them marked for leveling in a minute anyway. A little bit of wear on some of these frets down here, but nothing much. And so they should come up really nicely. Yeah, we'll probably never know what the previous owner did with this, causing those original screws to tear out or become loose, and then what he or she did to kind of reinforce the holes, and in doing so created something that was able to pull out over time and make a bit of a mess, such that the action started changing and rising. Unwelcome risings in the action department. But I don't think there's anything about this wood that essentially means that it should fall apart or that it can't hold the loading of these strings. It's an Ibanez, it's a maple neck, maple heel. It should work just fine. Well, it's a maple heel, but now it's got oak holding the screws, but you know, originally it was maple, and it should hold the original neck screws perfectly well. So this is currently, this is come off its thing. Oh, that's right. What I didn't do was check what was going on in here, did I? So let's just see what previous owner did there. Wow, this has got, what am I undoing the electrics for? I was going to say, even still, the electrics has got a whole load of screws on it. A ton of screws, which is really, it's like it's been riveted on or something. Okay, let's remove those instead. See what the tremolo blocking off is like. So these originally had black screws, which have worn, pow, there it goes, they've worn themselves off into a silver finish. Okay, a chunk of wood. So this was set to a pin down. Now there was something I can't remember. The action wasn't right to begin with, and I think it was either too high or too low. So one way or another, we may want to raise or lower this in advance. Let's have a look while it's not loaded. 1, 2, 1, 2. So if that gives us a taller, well, we won't know until we get some springs on it, but we still haven't got it under major load anyway. I'm going to need another. Where's it gone? Where's it gone? Where's it gone? There it is. Some people get very particular about which way the springs go. They can't stand it if the springs are set to spread. And there's some people kind of do invent some interesting and I think not very credible arguments about what happens if you load the springs that way. I think the block doesn't care what direction the springs are pointing in. All it cares is the overall force on the block is spread out on the block. Okay, so see, I've hooked my shirt now with this. Okay, what I will do is I'm just going to lightly attach these other strings if I can free them up. Bear with me, and then we'll look at putting this under sort of a bit of a block. Obviously, with a Floyd Rose like this, ideally you want it both horizontal and at the right height. Now this string has broken somewhere and it's been put on with a very small amount of spare slack or leftover, so it's actually going to make fitting this quite difficult. Fingers crossed. Okay, so yeah, so the issue is if we're going to end up with this laid flat, we're going to have to, I don't have a tremolo arm for this, we're going to need it pulling flat and then to a place where we can block it off. Put a piece of wood in there and block it off to keep the whole thing horizontal to the deck. Now, straight away, with the neck completely realigned, what you'll know is that this now is starting out incredibly low action. Just about plays actually, but obviously it's got the movement in it that we don't want. And the thing about the tremolo block, to block it off, is we have to block it from the other side, not this big wooden block in here. That doesn't really work. I mean, I guess it stops it going forward, but in a way what we really want is it to pull against something on the other side, a smaller shim, like a thin shim, but we can see. It would just be great if it was simpler than that, but it never is. Now this is now leaning slightly forwards. Let's see if we're anywhere near in tune with anything. So, let's pull it down, clank. So really, the best way to lock this off, in my book, is, in a way, you'd want it to, this thing to pull back but lock. So putting this block in here on the floor like that isn't really my favourite way of doing it, because the minute this pulls in the springs a fraction more, the minute it drops out. But I suppose it comes down to what works. If I go there, that's not level. If I go here, that's not level because it's too far up. Okay, so this piece of wood right now doesn't really hold it anywhere level the way I'd want. And then we pull it and it goes further back against there, and that's what we want. So that's too, what do we want? Well, that's too fat. We need a tiny bit thinner than that to keep it level. So that is, 0. That is, so 16 mils. Let's just look at it again. Push it away. 16 mils. locking it down flat, pushing it all the way down, even further down. So I guess this is aimed to work just inside there. Is that what it's saying? That's still too big. So that 16 mils is too big. So we need to make that smaller if we're going to do anything with it. I suppose we could use a little bit of rotary thing, probably the pillar stand thing. Let's move those things out of the way. Put that on there. Be with you in a minute. Sorry, this is ultra boring. I'm going to try and take a millimetre off here by hand. Get on there. Get up there. Get up there. Just about, actually. That is nearly. So what we'd want to do at this point, am I happy with that? That's, what do we want? If we want it to work, what do we need? We need it a fraction thinner, don't we, to get that extra bit. Let's do a tiny bit more then to get it totally horizontal. Completely sorry about this camera. Other side, flatten it out as well. Oh, skid, crash. Right, over there. Right. Ooh, close, very close. Very close, very close, very close. So it's still a fraction too thick. So I'll just try and get the last bit off. Sometimes doing things by hand like this that work their way down to exactly the thing you want is a very satisfying way to do it. Now this is slightly uneven at the one end and the other, which is what's probably making it a little bit difficult. That's almost spot on. And if I were going to even it up a tiny bit more, I would just concentrate on evening up these two sides. Yeah, it's quite nice to work down with sandpaper, because when you get down to the place you want to go, you're approaching it very lightly. And you sort of get down to the size of piece that you want without kind of the risk of a massive overrun or overshoot. This is actually difficult to get this to a square size. We don't want it down, do we? But we do want this tremolo thing to pull in on it. So what I'll do is I'll put that there and we'll screw this in a bit further to put a little bit more. Oh, it's the other way around, isn't it? Dope. I don't want that. I want straight, level, and if we pull any harder, which we're going to, that will just hold it level. So now we can tune up. I hate that when trying to do fret leveling and setups. You get the string that was on there breaks. Right, I'm going to use a spare one over here. Absolute pain in the thingies. Where are the spares? Give me a fiver. There's 2 packs, but that's not spares. There's a single pack of spares knocking about here that I now can't find. Single individual spares. Holy cow. All right. None there. Get one from out here. Thanks. Just use a, oh, here's a 10. Here's a 10. I don't know why they fell off there. Okay, whatever. Here's a 10. Right. Often what happens, the sacrificial string gives up the ghost and drops dead. Right, so I'm going to put that through there with the ball end sticking out at this end, just like so, and I'm going to cut it. Get rid of this because I'm done with that. Snip-ons. Now, just before we do anything else, we've got to undo this crushing locking piece here, which we can throw that broken one in the bin now. Then we cut this one back to about here, lock it in there. I find this a very brutal and crude way of holding a string in place. It seems to me rather primitive. Still, that's how people seem to do it. Okay, that can go away, that can go in the bin. That cut off bit can go in the bin, that spare bit of that can go in the bin. Right, okay, so we're in the right sort of area now. Put that away there. So, here we have the thing. Now, the guitar. Now I'm going to check the height of the action. So currently we've got about 1.5 and we've got 1.2, which is pretty much my favorite style target action. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to slack all these strings off for a minute, take the pressure off it. Not completely, just slack it off a bit. And I'm going to put this in here and I'm going to take each of these down counterclockwise by half a turn. Okay, and that will lower this action by half a turn. Put it on the load again. Now this is now up, come up because that's dropped out. Let's put that back in. Come on, you. Stay. Level, yes. Action. Well, let me just get this right here. That's actually higher than I want it to be. Did I go counterclockwise? I did, didn't I? What a silly boy. Let's go in. Go back to the first one. Back. Back. Let's go down another half and down another half. Alright, now we're getting there. So that's on just about one. That's on just about one. So I think we need a quarter back up on each. And that, with the lock on, should have us in our perfect place. I think that's where we want to be. Now we'll just make sure we're somewhere near tune. So that is good. Neck on, alignment good, position of bridge horizontal. The only downside now is I think let's see what the height over the first fret is. My feeling is it could be a millifraction too high compared to what I prefer, but that's just me. Let's see what we've got at the first fret. Yeah. So that's interesting. That's really good, and it comes higher as we go across. I think this is, you've got to concede that this is it's Ibanez's direct setting, or its perfect setting, which actually is pretty good. It's only a little higher on the bass strings, but I tend to avoid having that gradient so that it's higher on the bass strings, but they've definitely gone that way. But I think it will be good. Okay, so now for the purpose of setup, I'm checking the relief on the neck, and it's dead flat. So I think we need to give it a tiny bit of relief, more than none. So I was talking to John, who came over this afternoon to bring a guitar, and he was asking me, how much relief do you need? And I used my age-old advice, which is a tiny bit more than none. So this has currently got none. So I'm going to use the adjuster to turn it slightly counterclockwise, just to allow a tiny bit more relief. And there it is already, a little tiny bit. Fine. Ibanez's can handle a very flat neck because they're usually very good fretwork. So I'm not going to go any more than that. I'm satisfied with that little adjustment. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the fret leveling and then the fret crowning. And once I've done that, I'm going to pause, grab something to drink, take a few minutes break while I tidy up and get everything ready. And I also, off camera, I'll do polishing of the frets. But first of all, the leveling part. So if you just, I always do this now, I sort of reality check. I think to myself, have I set the relief first? Yes. Have I then set the action at both ends? Yes. I'm leaving the action at the nut end the way that Ibanez have chosen it in their with their metal locking nut, and I've got the action here right now the way I want it, and I've now got the action at the other end. So relief, bridge action, nut or first fret action, all good. Now I've calibrated my fret leveling tool, and I'm just going to ease these strings out of the way to give me access to the what I call the E track. Yeah, you've got a good view there, it's okay. And so I'm going to start working on the E track. Now I can see straight away that it's helping me just clear up a little bit of wear on those lower frets. So that's a nice bonus of doing the fret leveling, that we can just tidy up that fret wear so that it's not annoyance anymore. And so I do a little bit of sort of careful, gentle leveling like this, and stop and consider what we've got. So we're cutting here, here, a bit more here, a bit more here, 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 not much, a bit here, not much, some, none, some. So we've got a low spot on 13 and 14, and that may be affecting bends. So if we're going to struggle with any bends choking out, it will be ones that start on the 14th, because that's effectively down in a little dip. But it's probably not so much of a dip that it's going to really ruin our playability, but we'll find out when we bend notes up into the G track. I'm happy with that. I'm not going to do any more than that for that. Everything's playing cleanly. Now I'm going to move the B string out of the way, do the same calibration in the B track. Again, just ironing out those little grooves from fret wear down the bottom there. The sanding process will also smooth those out, so we don't have to completely rid ourselves of them with this process. We can sort of hold off a little bit, and we can be assured that we'll get rid of them. Now there's also a low spot here at 9, so if we're going to get bends, if we're going to choke on bends, I'm going to make my little prediction. This is why I love this method of leveling. It's high spots here, it's telling me, you can see the dust building up. Low spots are going to be here and here, so 9th fret and 12th, 13th, 13th and 14th. All right, these are the trouble areas, and it's because this fret and these two frets are low. These are higher. You can see they're building up the dust there a little bit, and everything else is just about perfect. So we've got a little bit of the old up and downing, but not an absolute ton. Now what I'll do now is I'll check the notes of the B track, make sure they play. Fine, they play, but if there's still an unevenness, we might find them choking out. Actually it's not, so that's pretty good. But it's just, that's my kind of alert to say this is where you will choke out if you're going to choke out on bends at all. Bends at all? Sounds like a drug. But as it happens, it's fine. And the calibration of the tool is the same on the G track now, so I don't have to recalibrate that. So I'm just easing across the string. It's a little bit of a pull, so it might break, not when we get down to the wound strings anyway. So this is, quite often this is the track that we have to do more leveling on if we've got high bend chokes when the E string comes across into what I call the G track. And that's because when it does come across, when you bend it across with your finger, you're actually sending the string up a hill, if you think about it as a cross section. And by sending it up a hill, It still goes back down to a low fixed point at the end. If you think of the cross-section view of a kind of semicircle or a hill, exaggerated, the string goes back down to a lower point, and it has to be able to do that. And when it goes up the hill, it's that the fact that it's higher and the string has to go down lower takes away the bit of clearance you have. It's all right. I don't have strong enough hands to bend any bigger than that. Okay, so I'm confident that that's all good, and now I'm going to just do the wound strings now. And the aim at this point, what you find is that high and low spots tend to sort of continue their way across the radius of the neck. So the kind of low ones, sometimes they change, but quite often they stay the same. So the one that's low over here would often tend to be lower on the other side as well. But they do change sometimes. You can have a different high and low profile on the opposite side. But what is quite common on the heavier strings, or the wound strings, is something I call fret slap. And it's not really produced by a high or low single fret, which we were kind of examining on the other strings. It's caused by the general ups and downs getting in the way of the wound strings as they spin. And of course they need a bit more room to spin compared to the plain strings, and so that you're liable to get fret slap. Almost all guitars have a kind of some fret slap on the lower strings. And what I found, and the reason I continue to use this method of leveling, is that I discovered one day that it not only does the business of leveling uneven high or low frets, it also has a side benefit. If you kind of use it carefully, you're sort of using it doing the same thing, but you rethink what you're doing, and you can use it to even out the whole of the neck and average out, if you like, the hills and valleys, as I often call it. And when you do that, when you iron out the hills and valleys, what you're doing is you're creating a tiny bit more room for these wound strings to spin, because it's when they're spinning that they hit the ups and downs, the hills and valleys, and that's what causes them to do this thing I call fret slapping. And fret slap is a kind of slightly rattly sound that, unlike individual high or low notes, it tends to accompany the plucking, fretting notes all the way up and down a particular string, usually on the low ones. And so I found is when you if you find you have that, which often you do, just gently using the rod in the thicker bass strings like this, with a little bit of downwards pressure but not much, letting the curvature of this rod do the work more than anything, you can actually alleviate and often get rid of that fret slap altogether. And you're still fret leveling, but you're sort of fret leveling clusters of frets. You're sort of pulled out, you're doing the whole thing at a macro level rather than focusing on the individual frets. I think that's... Might do a little bit more at the top there, a little bit of sizzle, as I would call it. So a tiny bit more at the top, and then we'll move on to the E. So when I say to myself a little bit more at the top, you'll notice that what I then do is I apply the rod, which has its little curve built into it, and I don't flatten the whole thing. I tend to press down on the area I want to, inverted commas, focus on, and that's helping me pay more attention to that area and give it more attention with the leveling beam. So if there's a bit of fret slap creeping in at the top there, that will usually address it. Better than it was. I'm quite happy with that. Let's finally calibrate for the low E. And here we go. So now if you think about it, after we started off with an unusual problem, which was fixing whatever had happened to the neck. So we've done that. But, whoops, you decided you're going to what? You haven't dropped out, have you? That came undone at the block. That's not very handy. Do you know, I can't stand when it does that. It's just crap. I don't know what happened there, but pulled some slack somewhere. Right, let's go back to where I was. Oh yeah, I was pulling this off to one side in order to level it. I've forgotten what I was going to say now. Yes, so right from the beginning, started out with slightly unusual fixing of the neck, or diagnosing what the hell was going on with that neck joint, sorting that out, being confident that that's fixed it and we don't have to worry about it, and then get into setting the playing action basically that we want, which is fixed bridge with the bridge plate level, which is a sort of fairly common thing. It doesn't matter, you can have it tilting a bit or sitting wonky, whatever you want, but people, you know, we like to see it level. It seems to work better visually. So we want it level, and then we want the action at both ends set nice and low. Yeah. Oh, that's hitting some paper, that's why that's making a crap sound. So that's fine, that's still very good. So now I'm going to get ready to clear these up, put my little tools of the trade, fret leveling tools off to one side, and then you can then remove the strings here, and this will drop the block out again, but that's okay, we'll put it back in when the time is right. That's the only problem with having a block, is that you do lose it when you change the strings because it releases the tension. There is a device you can buy that holds it in the position you want, without it ever coming undone between string changes, but you know, you have to get one of those little devices. So once these strings are off here, I'm going to bin them because they've done their service as sacrificial strings, and then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remark the strings, the frets with marker pen, and then we're going to crown the files. No, try again. Crown the frets with the fret crowning file, and after that it'll be okay. Thank you. Big jump forward. That's where the block pops out and it goes for a walk somewhere. So yeah, so once I've done that, then I'll prepare the neck to be mask it off for it to be leveled, polished, and then we'll come back in when I've done that, because it's a bit boring and long-winded for a Tuesday night. I've got to pack 3 guitars tonight as well, so okay, so there's me old strings off. Junk that. It's all a bit dusty right now because the leveling process made dust, as will the polishing, sanding and polishing process, and some people get quite aerated. The point here is that these all these bits will rattle around, so if we can't be bothered, we can just sit that out for the time being. We don't need that on for polishing frets. Yeah, some people think that, get quite annoyed that if you level frets, they're very frightened or paranoid that the dust will get into the pickups, for example, and people will say, well, doesn't the magnetic fret dust go into the pickups? And I have to remind them that fret dust, first of all, isn't magnetic because there's almost no ferrous component in it at all. It's an alloy of what is it, nickel, which is copper and tin or something, and some steel, but it's not a tiny fraction of ferrous material. Anyway, the point is, first of all, it's dust and it doesn't go anywhere. It just stays on the frets or on the fingerboard. And after that, it certainly doesn't care about being attracted to the pickups, because it's not significantly magnetic to go anywhere. So it's just it's not a thing to worry about. And so at this stage in the game, the thing can be very dusty, and you know, I wipe it off and then I will clean it off with a naphtha compound, or a form of naphtha afterwards. So now I'm just going to use this StewMac file to crown the frets so that they are reshaped to a nice arch shape, but whilst removing or without affecting the actual surface top center of the fret, which is the point that we've just leveled in respect of everything else. So this tool and marking it up is a good way of making sure that we reshape it, but as long as I leave a very thin line of black marker, it's my way of knowing that I've not filed anywhere on the top of the fret, just the edges, which is what I need to do. So I can basically recrown all of these. So there's a couple here that have taken a fair bit of leveling to get them level where I wanted them. So I spend a little bit longer working these back to shape, and I think some of these were a little flattened before anyway, so they may have been either played flattish, or somebody may have leveled some frets in the past, because there were some that did look a little bit flatter than others. But again, it's hard to be sure when it's a second-hand guitar. So sometimes when I'm doing this part, it helps you to see where there are still some little grooves. There's a play groove here and here, and you know, you have to consider at that point whether do you want to do more leveling. Well, it's kind of a bit late now, the strings are off. Thankfully, I know that having left that little bit of groove in there, the sanding process will take that out adequately. So by the time I finish the sanding, going through a whole series of grits from 240 to 400 to 600 to 1000 to 1500, then to the micro mesh, which is 1500, 1800, 2400, 3200, 3600, 4000, 6000 and 8000 and 12,000. Once you've been through all of that, there won't be any trace of that wear grooves left. But it is a matter of experience, knowing that I could leave that in without leveling further, because I knew that the amount that I left in there would be taken away by the remainder of the process yet to do. And you can only know that by experience. It's a hard one to call if you haven't done it loads of times like I have. You know, back in 2014, 2014, when I'd been doing this maybe a year as a sort of part-time thing, and I imagined, if I stopped working in corporate life in London, I imagined myself maybe doing more of this or doing it all the time. And I kind of pictured myself standing here with this file doing yet another neck, and I thought to myself, you know, because I in many ways, if something doesn't interest me or I don't like something, I can't sustain too much interest for it. And I thought to myself, are you just going to get bored to tears within a year or two? You know, are you going to wish you'd never started doing more of this every day? And actually, 8 years or 7 years since that point, I'm quite surprised to say that I'm not bored with it. I mean, if I'm honest, yes, I can get a bit tired of talking my way through things, because just as people get tired of hearing me blathering on while I'm doing this, I get tired of blathering on. You know, sometimes I just wish it'd be so nice to just switch off and not say anything. But, you know, it's not even that bad. You know, I always keep in mind that you know, a customer who brings me their guitar. It may be, in the nicest possible sense, it may be a routine setup for me, but for a customer it's their guitar, and you know, they find more interesting than I do sometimes in what I do to the guitar. So I always do it from that point of view, that it's for them, not for my gratification or glory. So what I'm doing now is I'm just taking some of the grease and dust off the board. We're going to need to do it again later on because there'll be more dust, but the reason I'm doing this right now is that, first of all, it helps clean the marker pen off the frets once and for all. But as far as the fingerboard goes, it helps to take off some grease, which means that my masking tape will stick better throughout the next part of the process, which is the sanding out and polishing, which I need it to stick to protect the fingerboard. Okay, so I'm going to get a load of masking tape and cover up this fingerboard and the edges of here. Then I'm off camera, I'm going to do the polishing, and then I'm going to switch cameras back on, and we'll oil the board, restring, reset the block, and get everything set up ready to go. So I'll see you shortly. Whoa, right, all cleaned up, ready to oil actually. So let's put some oil on it first, and then once we put some oil on it, we will restring and get the bridge back on, which will obviously be accompanied with a bit of rattling, as was the case. So we've got 10 gauge strings to put on, and so what we'll do is we'll get the strings on, we'll stretch them out fully, then we'll lock them off with the tuning. Even if you're not using the tremolo, it's still good. You still might as well use the enjoy the tuning stability offered by the locking nut. So you might as well lock it off when the time is right, and just use the micro tuners. That's one way to do it. Since they're there, it feels like you might as well. Okay. Right. Thank you. Okay, so what am I going to do? I'm going to first of all get that on. So I think what I'll do is I'll get a string on or two and use that to hold up the bridge. A couple of strings on even. Some people like to fit the ball ends through there, so we could or couldn't. Let's not, but some people just like to leave the ball end dangle in. So other people like to just fit that in. Oh no, we don't want that bit, we want the chunky bit to grip. What am I doing? I don't really need this thin bit, do I? Let's just make sure I've got the length right. Alright, so tons of length. So we snap off the ball end, we attach this end here, lock it away, like so. Bring the locking device back on, give it a good clamp, run it up here. I go two past the target one that I want to put it in. Borrow me this. Rewind. Okay, so I'll just pull it up and keep it on this things for a minute. So we know it's going to go down to there, so we can bring it back to there. Start winding it. That is probably a bit more wound on than you would normally need. Actually, it's not that far off. So hard to say. So I could, first of all, now that's bouncing, I could flip this over. We could reattach the these as before. I just was checking out some Ukraine reports in my drink break. It seems that they're on the counter-offensive. So this is amazing. That's better. Get that. Put that. Yes. So there's a bit of a news blackout, but by all accounts, thanks. By all accounts, they're they're full on counter-offensive to take Kherson. If I can just, oh, gosh, right, it needs a bit more pull. Damn it! I need some more pull than that. Right, let's put a second one in. That's the problem. There's not enough keeping it against there. Silly. Yes, so they are getting stuck in, and there's lots of different views on how far they are, but obviously nobody really knows, so keeping a bit of an information blackout. But I just I still regularly hear the commentators that I listen to, they put on some ranting of yet another one of the sort of TV pundits in Russia, declaring that it's got nothing to do with the war, fighting with Ukraine. This is about Russia versus Great Britain, and they're going to teach us with one of their hypersonic missiles that will blow us into a radioactive dust in a matter of minutes with no warning at all. And it's quite I can't believe that we are sitting still in a world where they say that, and that's on the left. Yeah, we say nothing back. We don't. I know you don't have to respond to provocation. Obviously, that isn't a necessity. But it's kind of difficult to believe that we just listen to mortal threats, and the bullies who shout those threats at us are used to shouting them with no comeback whatsoever. They're able to do it, and I guess it's the same way with everything. You only respond when it's something is that serious. But to be told day after day that your island is going to be, your home is going to be wiped out by a Russian hypersonic nuclear missile that is being sent at you because of a war of hatred started by a stunted, ignoramus, juvenile, malformed, twisted ego, who assumes the right to threaten and destroy, not just threaten, but actively destroy. There's something, when that happens, I find that unspeakably offensive. I guess I used to, and when I was at school, and somebody or a bully would do something nasty to me, and it struck me that that's how I felt in that situation. And I don't really see how we can continue just living on the edge of somebody else's threats like that. And then some people will say, well, yes, but to retaliate means you bring on, you willfully hasten the end of the known civilized world. And there's truth in that. And you go, yeah, actually, that's true. Should I turn my cheek and take some more threats? Because if you remember the school bully, you know, the playground bully, when they hit you across the face and you did nothing back, it never satisfied them. It empowered them. You know, if they slapped you in the face and you didn't hit them back, they weren't, oh, okay, I've done it. Yeah, that's all right. I've had my fill. Off you go. That was very intoxicating for them. You know, it meant that you were powerless beneath them. You didn't have the courage to strike them back. And all it led to was them doing it more and more as and when they wanted to. And, you know, and not for me particularly, but I think for some people, you know, even goes beyond just the unkind taunting and occasional physical slapping, you know. Then they start to torture people and do terrible things to them. But, you know, do we just put up with it? You know, when we were in the playground situation, what did we risk? We risked what seemed like the end of the world at the time. If you were afraid of the way that, you know, the bully's raw aggression, which I was, I don't mind admitting it, I was frightened to death of it. But if you were afraid of it, the thought of retaliating was kind of almost as bad as imagining your own demise. You know, it was pretty horrific. So you didn't, you know, and you let them bully you and do those terrible things. But, you know, same as now, the thought of striking back at Russia and, you know, stopping them bullying further, obviously carries with it this fear of, oh my God, we'll start nuclear war, but it's still like the playground. See that? I hate that about these saddles, these things. That, and stretching the strings, that pulled forward this saddle. It didn't have the strength to hold up. The downward force of the fixing isn't enough to hold it in place. That's just, I think it's such a naff design, and I don't mind saying that to you, Ibanez. You really, you know, this is not a good system. You know, you want to, you know, you want something that's going to stay there. And how hard do you have to shove that to make it stay? And then will it stay when you tighten it up again? And these aren't even in the right position. So there's going to be some real issues. There's going to be some issues, and the thing is, I'm going to just address this intonation thing before we get any further, because we really have to get the start line of the intonation right on this before we start really putting the whole thing under load. We've got what looks like a loose jack. Nice going. That's going to be. I've got to get to the shop tonight, so this may not be a welcome excursion. Let me just get a note, which isn't on the tuner. Put you over there. See, that's pretty good. So I'm going to use this as the basis to set the other ones up, which means I've got to slack all of these off quickly, and I'm going to hand place them based on the first three, which are in good shape. So here comes the first, that's my first one, here comes the D. So I'm going to push the D back, probably have to go a bit slacker. Yeah. Right, let's have a look. There's, down the long side, forward a bit. That will do. You can get a little device to hold these things while you do this, but I can use my fingernails. This one will need to go to the back. Thanks, man. Pulls up the little washer with it. The person who originally designed these, I think, was having a laugh. Get you back there, right. Hurrah. Make sure the block of wood's still there, which is trying to fall out the back. Come along, stay in. Flat, yep. Right, so we are almost there. Now I'm going to do some stretching, which we really want to do lots of before we lock down any nuts. The other thing, by the way, which I didn't check on before we locked it down, is where these are in the middle of their... Right, they're all far out, actually. Far out, man. So that's okay, they're actually wound right out. Yeah, that'll be fine. They're only going to go downwards. So, what I'm going to do... Well, actually, they change tune. The tuning changes sometimes when you clamp down the strings there. So, it's good to have... You can sometimes need to wind it the opposite way. It's not always being tightened up. That's a mistake to make. So, you want to be all the way out with 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, something like that. Now, yes, tuner. So you see how much slack came out of the wound strings just by stretching that. They went right out of tune, whereas the plain strings hardly went out of tune at all. So we still need to do that on the stretching on the wound strings, and again on the plains just in case, but eventually the wound strings will stop going out of tune and we'll be able to lock them down and fine tune them. But if you lock down, it's always the thing, if you lock down too soon and you haven't stretched the strings out properly, you kind of defeat the object, because you'll be constantly unlocking them, retuning, tightening them up, locking them down. Yeah, so a little bit more on these, you'll be nearly done. Then I've got to have a look at the jack here. It's not an easy one to do up. I don't actually know how these darn things do up, because they are buried in the little tucked away socket. Maybe you can get to them from the back and hold them. Getting close to stable. one more stretch on here. I've got to go to the supermarket after this, because then I've got to go home and book couriers for 3 guitars to go out tomorrow, and then I've got to pack them late into the night. Oh, it's a hard life. So you can see that the wound strings are taking much longer to stabilize, and if you don't do this, this stretch will keep on coming out throughout your playing when you don't want it to. Blimey. Let's just check. Oh, I'm turning the wrong key. I think these two are fractionally long, so I'm going to just draw these back in. These tiny adjustments. Back then. You go to there, and you go to there. So back. Where's this one? That's okay. Onto there. Why is this one so far forward? Is that because it's pulled itself? I hate this. If that's done that, that's a waste of our time. It's got to stay where I put it. If it doesn't, and we're in up something creek with not much chance of getting it ever to work, which is really crappy. Right, that is where you've got to stay, and then this is where you've got to go back from there, and then that one is from there. Right. Let's get the block back in. Stay there, stay there. Right. Right. put these on now. Let's lock them on. Wrong thing, right thing. Is this the right one? No, it's not even that one. It's that one. Thank you. Good. They went on without changing the tuning, which is a good sign. Well made. Cheaper ones, sometimes when you fix them on like that, they press down and the whole tuning goes out, and you haven't adjusted for it down this end. But it's great, that's in tune. Right, now the question is, just before I finish nearly, is do we have a chance of doing up this, what's it, jack socket? Your guess is as good or as bad as mine. It's not the standard sockety thing that is familiar and reasonably easy to get to. So how we would tighten it, I do not this second know. If it turns out there has to be some special tool, I will tear my hair out. Oh, okay. Yeah, we can do it from there. Jolly good. Hurrah. So we need the small adjustable spanner, if we can get it in there to do the job. Can we get it in there to do the job? Where's the flat surface? Can we do that bit down? We probably can. Hey, can we get this on, please? Wow, what a crappy, difficult thing this is to move. Have we got a decent spannerized thing? It's not necessarily a very good one, but no, I don't think I've got any more little spanners for damped. I have got something here that may or may not work as well. That one's too big, that one's going to be too big. Can't get that one in there. I certainly can't get that one in there. Blessed. Okay, so I have to find something that will do this. And it's not going to be that particular adjustable spanners, is it? Adjustable spanners are so crude anyway. So that comes around and I'm touching the pot, which is not good. I suppose it's getting there very slowly, but it's much less than bleeding ideal. It's probably only going to come undone again one day. It's just a matter of getting a bit by bit. If I had some decent spanners, this would have been a much simpler thing, but I don't, and it isn't, so I'm having to slightly fudge. that seems to be going on a long time, but it's definitely getting stiffer, shall we say. Yeah, but it's not a brilliant design, I have to say. I'll keep on going for a bit. Little nibbles at this. Come on, you can do it, you can do it. Trouble is, you've got no real feedback here with what's going on. I'm turning it and I don't want the whole thing to turn, and I can't really feel what the pressure is that I'm putting on this whole unit. You know, and I kind of imagine the whole thing's going to just go snap at some point. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Let's have some. Should we have some fresh black screws? Why not? Why not? So this is a plate that sits on top of the body, which is kind of slightly unorthodox. You know, mostly we're used to plates recessed in there, but anyway, sorry about these boring camera angles. You can probably tell I'm trying to get everything done and get out before the shop shuts. Otherwise, we've got no cat food and I won't be popular. Not that I am anyway, but okay, so we've got our tremolo blocked off. Obviously, you have to put, when you change the strings, you have to load them up. When you load it up, get the block in, get the springs on, the block in, and then that will hold in place, and then you've got effectively a hard tail. I'm pretty confident that the neck will hold exactly where it should now. Tightened up. I'll give it a manual crank in a second to make sure everything's tightened up as much as we need. Okay, we're done, and we can put this back on. That would normally be, where am I doing? I want to get to there. That's where I need to get to them. Yes, that's right. Okay. So we're just pretty much done. I say I'll just do a quick turn on the neck screws to make sure they're good, and then that will be this baby put right and ready to go. So we also took care of the fret wear, courtesy of a nice fret level. Cleared up some fret slap, set a even slightly lower action than before, which it seems to like, and fitted some new screws, replace the shined up ones. Right, let's get a full size Phillips, no, regular, is it Phillips? Yes, Phillips, not Posi, full size Phillips, and I will just give it a hand turn. Good. All good. That's good. That's good. Everything's good. I'm done. Thank you for watching. The Ibanez S520 back to life. Right, see you soon.